the mic over to our expert here, John. John, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Jessica. Thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate you and Conrad working with me to help put together these webinar series. Excited about bringing some additional information to everyone out there. Every little bit of information helps in this particular profession, so I'm more than happy to help out. As just mentioned, this is going to focus on the CVSA International Roadcheck, which is occurring in about 3 weeks, May 16th through the 18th. It's a 3-day focused initiative that will be focusing on mainly ABS and cargo securement. So just a quick introduction of myself. Again, my name is John Rugarber. I'm a regional safety manager with AIM Integrated Logistics, which is actually a subsidiary of AIM Transportation Solutions. Down below my title is my email at jrugarber@aimntls.com. If you'd like to send me an email, any remarks, questions, comments, feel free. I'm always up for learning and helping other people. So there's some information that I have that is not going to be in the PowerPoint. I just could have filled it with a ton of stuff. I only have a limited amount of time. So again, if you want to contact me outside of this webinar, feel free to hit me up on that email, and I'd be more than happy to help out. So let's take a look and get started. Move on to the first page. So this initiative is put on by the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance. In other words, CVSA. Anything associated with them, this is their logo. You'll see on their booklets, their pamphlets, anything of that nature. It's an initiative that covers the continent of North America, actually. And that's why you see down below, you see the Canadian flag, the American flag in the middle, and the Mexican flag. If you were to go into the CVSA website to gain additional information, it does break it out into individual countries. So the statistics that you're seeing are not going to necessarily be just the United States unless you go into that specific area. So really, there's some Canadian carriers, obviously. Not sure if any Mexican carriers are on this PowerPoint. I'm hoping there's some Canadian people. But you can get your specific country information off of that particular website. So the International Roadcheck, it's a Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, in other words, CVSA. It's an annual high volume, high visibility inspection. And what we mean by that is you'll see that most inspection stations will be open during the course of these 3 days. They randomly open here and there throughout the course of their workday. Here, you'll see it open pretty much 24 hours a day for those 3 days. You'll see a much bigger enforcement process, more vehicles, more inspectors on the road, more state trooper vehicles out there because they focus on this and they want to make it a high visibility type of thing. It follows the North American Standard Level 1 inspection, which is a 37-step inspection process. If you go onto the CVSA website, it gives you a breakdown of actually all 8 inspections types and what they are. I'll describe them a little later in the PowerPoint also. But what it does is follow this level 1, which is a 37-step inspection process. The CVSA does give you an outline of what that 37-step process entails. So if you'd like to go to their website, they have a ton of information. Some of you may be members of CVSA as we are, but even if you're not, you can get in and see a lot of information that may be helpful to you. And each year, CVSA highlights particular categories to focus on, and it's based on the previous year's statistics. I was just on a webinar last week offered by Commercial Carrier Journal, where they brought on some experts, some maintenance people, some operations people, but they also included a retired state trooper from the state of Arizona who actually consulted and worked with CVSA to put this program together and keep it in working order. And he did mention that they do look back in the previous year's numbers and decide what to pick from that to add on to this newest year. To the right, you'll see I've put in a little pamphlet here. This pamphlet is printable. It is in color. Highly recommend that you go on to the website. If you'd like, you go, I think it's www.roadcheck.org, I think. If you go on there, you'll be able to print this little pamphlet out. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but you could see I highlighted the 2 focus points for this year, which is going to be ABS and cargo securement. So the North American Standard Out of Service criteria, they update it on an annual basis. And that's part of what that state trooper does, is he goes to meetings, they gather all their information, all their thoughts, and they come up and they revise this booklet each year. It's effective April 1st of each year. And the last time we checked, it's about $45 to purchase this booklet. I highly recommend you purchase the booklet. I don't get a kickback from CVSA on the sale of these, but this is a great book. It's laminated. It's got great pictures in case you don't fully understand what the violation is about. And again, it's updated every year. So if you get the most current year, you'll be current with what the state troopers or the inspectors are using as their criteria for the violations themselves. This is the cover page of this year's book. That upper right-hand corner on your screen, I'm not sure, may be blocked by our pictures, but that does say 2023. We have a fine young gentleman there from the Houston Police Department. Looks like he's intently inspecting underneath of a trailer undercarriage for something. You could see right there letters on his cap, look like it's a CVSA lettering on his cap. So that is the front page of the booklet. And again, it's probably around $45, maybe a little more, but definitely worth every penny to purchase that book, at least at a minimum for the operations personnel and possibly maintenance personnel. Not every driver needs to have that particular book, but operations and safety should definitely have it in their hands if they get a chance. So areas of focus, again, ABS functions and cargo securement are going to be the focus for this year's initiative. Under the ABS functions, so ABS functions, they reduce collisions. And how do they reduce collisions? By preventing locking and skidding of the tires on either the tractor, straight truck, even our own personal vehicles. Non-commercial vehicles are all supplied with ABS functions. As of, I think it was 97 and then 2001, any vehicle manufactured today has to have the ABS functions associated with it. So I venture to say that we probably don't have too many vehicles out there past that age group. So for all intents and purposes, any vehicles we're running today are going to become equipped with the ABS functions. Now, ironically, we're talking about CVSA and the out of service criteria. The ABS function portion of the inspection process is not an out of service violation under the criteria, but it is a precursor for the inspector to be able to pull the vehicle in and inspect the vehicle for any other violations. And what I mean by that is usually when the ABS is malfunctioning, the trailer ABS light, which is amber, and on the driver's side will usually be illuminated. Nothing like having a beacon in the middle of the night identifying you as a truck to pull over as you travel down the roadway with that light glowing orange as you're driving down the road. So that would give the officer the probable cause to pull you over, and then he would begin his inspection, whether it be a level 1, level 2, level 3, but you've drawn his attention, and then whatever occurs after that, we don't know. On the cargo securement side, we're looking at improper securement poses a risk to the commercial motor vehicle driver himself and other motorists. I'm sure if there's some flatbed carriers on the call, that we've all seen pictures of coils that have come loose, rolled forward, went through the tractor, went through the bulkhead of the trailer, came out the side of a flatbed trailer, or a Conestoga, a soft-sided trailer. There's probably instances of steel I-beams coming through. I think a number of drivers have been killed because the steel I-beams have slid forward and went through the tractor cab. Other motorists, self-explanatory. If any of this product falls off, it could impact other motorists by impacting their car itself or causing problems on the roadway. Negatively affecting maneuverability. So think about it. You have a coil loaded on the trailer. the weight shifts, you go around a curve. Now all of a sudden, all that weight is on one side of the trailer or the other. The trailer tips. The vehicle could possibly roll over. So nothing good comes from unsecured cargo within the confines of the trailer itself or the flatbed itself. And then falling product could create traffic hazards and or collisions. Again, the millions of miles that we all travel, even in our own personal cars, we probably have seen numerous examples of things falling off of vehicles, not necessarily trucks. Probably everybody has seen somebody coming from Home Depot with 6 sheets of 3/4-inch plywood held on the top of their roof with a piece of string. Chances are any of us would not want to be behind that particular person, because it's only a matter of time before that string breaks and now you have 5 sheets of plywood scattered all over the interstate. So that's really the big focus for cargo securement, and why the inspectors and CVSA in general is looking out for the safety of the motoring public. So let's talk about anti-lock brake systems for a moment. This particular portion will fall under FMCSR 393.55, which is titled Anti-Lock Brake Systems. There's some subsets underneath of this, such as D and then 1, 2, and 3. The 1 pertains mainly to straight trucks, and this is again the manufacturing after March of '97, if I'm not mistaken. 2 pertains to truck tractors, or we can call them day cabs or sleeper cabs without the trailers attached. And the 3rd one is going to be circuitry, electrical issues that pertain to the trailer itself. So ABS malfunction circuits and signals for air brake vehicles. So maybe to clarify a little bit more, let's say number 2, you get written for 393.55 D2. That would most likely apply to the officer gets on the running board, looks at the dash, asks the driver to cycle the key, and the ABS light does not illuminate, or it does illuminate and does not go off. That would probably be most likely what that violation would be written under. Similar, he looks back at the trailer light does not illuminate or illuminates and doesn't go off, which would indicate a malfunction. And again, you'd be written under the subset number 3 on that particular one. Now, the more common violation is going to be this one to the right-hand side, where you see a picture of ABS. 393.55E. That basically is a fancy way of saying that your light doesn't work. It either is illuminated all the time or will not illuminate when you do the cycling of the key. That is most likely the violation that will be written. Another caveat to this, if you go in the FMCSRs and you look under 393.55E, it doesn't specifically state that the lens itself has to be marked. But if you look a little further in the reference underneath of that paragraph, you'll see FMVSS, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard, 121 air brake system. If you dig deeper into that, it does specify that the ABS light needs to be stamped, marked, somehow notated that that is an ABS light. If it was an additional light that you added post-purchase of the trailer, an accident occurred, your maintenance team puts on just an amber light to indicate that, there would have to be markings on the trailer. And again, it gets further into depth. We have actually been written, at least to my recollection, 3 times where we've been specifically cited for not having the ABS lamp marked. The marking, if it's not on the lens itself, needs to be at least 1 inch tall. And within 6, I think it's 5.9 inches, which let's call it 6 inches for the sake of the discussion, within 6 inches of the surrounding area of the ABS to indicate that that is an ABS light. So an easy violation to fix as your trailers come into your maintenance departments, but an easy one to forget also. And if you're not aware of it, you wouldn't even know it until it was written up on the violation report. There is the data queue section where you can go in and you can data queue violations that you don't agree with, But before you tried to data queue that particular violation, I would look closely a little further, looking at FMVSS 121. That's going to be the reason for the write-up. So your data queue would probably get denied under that particular circumstance. So just something to keep in the back of everybody's mind. It's an easy one to forget, and kind of hides in the shadows of the regulations there. So let's move on to some cargo securement. So it ranks as number 5 in the out of service criteria for violations in 2022. And to the right, you see the cover page of a J.J. Keller Cargo Securement Handbook for Drivers. Again, I'm not a spokesperson necessarily, nor am I a salesperson for J.J. Keller, but this is actually a very good book to give to your drivers to keep in their cab with them and on their person, so that if they have questions, they can refer to this booklet, and that would guide them along the road to doing the proper securement on whatever type of loads they have. They do sell an entire package that comes with some tools. You can use a gauge, a sliding gauge that would allow you to, let's say, for example, put in weights, and then it would tell you how many chains are needed, what type of straps are needed, the width, the working load limits of those items. So it's a nice little package to put together. If you're not currently using them, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to give JJ a call, ask them to give you some more information, get some pricing on that, and get that out to your drivers, because every little bit of information is helpful in this particular manner. And one thing I've come to realize, that flatbed drivers, for every flatbed driver, there's an opinion. There's a number of different ways to do things. If you talk to them, chances are the way they're doing it at that moment is the way they think is correct. It may be, but it may not be. So this helps to clarify some questions in there. And again, a good purchase. I'd recommend it highly to anyone that I speak to. So here we got 392.9, again under FMCSR, inspection of cargo securement devices and systems. So what exactly does this mean, or what are we talking about here? Well, this is mainly for the drivers of trucks and truck tractors. So again, 392.9, subset B, that's where it's going to fall. So we're talking about drivers, and this is where we want to be and what we want to talk about. Go down a little further, B2. Now, this is some of the criteria that the driver needs to do. Of interest was that Trooper in the last webinar did make it a point to say that when he was to inspect drivers, this is one of the things he looked for, is he went into the driver's logs and looked for the notations that they had inspected their cargo and devices within the first 50 miles. That is in the regulation. That is the regulation right there. The violation will be written under 392.9B2 if that notation is not entered in the driver's logbook. The next one would be 3I, driver makes a change of duty status. So for example, driver gets to stop 1, unloads a portion of his load, resecures, and is driving to his next stop. The officer would want to see a notation at that stop 1 that he had also inspected the cargo again before he left off to leave for his second route. It doesn't have to be a full I've inspected the load. You can come up with any acronym, for example, CSC, check load securement, any manner, something to indicate that he did an inspection is really what the inspector would be looking for. Another part of that regulation, we come down to 392.9B32, commercial motor vehicle driven for 3 hours. So the driver's going to stop at stop 1. Now his next stop is going to be 4 hours away. He needs to make a stop within 3 hours to check his securement, to make sure nothing has come loose, straps haven't been cut, chains haven't been broken. Again, some notation. In lieu of the 3 hours, he can also make the notation if he has been driving for 150 miles. So it's either or, either 3 hours or 150 miles, whichever comes first. So really, in case drivers, they get a little bit lackadaisical sometimes. They may forget. They may not even be aware that this is a regulation until they get stopped. And then they find out through the officer that they've been written up for that particular violation. If you want to look at the upper right-hand corner, I've grabbed a couple pictures. I thought this is a good indication of a good securement. You can see a coil up here. This coil is 46,000 pounds. We need to cover, in essence, we need to allow or chain up exactly 23,000 pounds needs to be covered by those securement devices. This gentleman has went above and beyond on this one. Let's take, for example, those chains are 3/8 inch grade 70 cargo transport chains. That gives them a working load limit of 6,600 pounds. So he's well above the 23,000 pounds. Not sure of the math on that. I think, let's see, 4 chains would be about 26,400 pounds. So you add that fifth and you got another couple thousand pounds of securement. So he's good on that. The securement devices, look down, you use some pop-ups on the flatbed. Looks like he used a little bit of the rub rail down in this lower corner. Binders would hopefully be rated 6,600 also. If he's using a smaller binder rated at 54, then that's what that limit would be, regardless of the fact that he's using 6,600 pound chains. And as an added benefit, he's added a top chain with a strap to go over the top to help to minimize or eliminate any movement sideways were he to take a left or right turn. Just the pure weight of that coil could maybe pull it to each side. So nice job of securement. I'm going to take for granted that he's done everything correctly there, and he's way over secured on that. Again, a great job. Could the gentleman have used 4? He could have used 4 with 4 chains at 6,600. He would have been rated at about 26,400 pounds. Still good, still over it, but that gentleman decided to put a 5th on for just peace of mind as he travels down the road. If we move down to the lower one, you'll see the steel logs. This gentleman did a great job, used straps. He's got 2 straps within the first 10 feet, and then it looks like another strap for every portion of 10 feet thereafter. He went ahead and secured that second tier on a third tier load. Interestingly, in the regulations, it didn't seem to specify aluminum logs alone. The closest I could find would be on covering 383-118, I think, which talked about logs, but I think in terms of logs being tree logs and tiered lumber, or dress lumber and building products, not aluminum logs specifically, but you do need to secure the tiered layers underneath also. So again, if you look under 393.118B1, that'll help you identify in more detail what you need to look for. But overall, for these 2 pictures, looks like we have good securement going on in these 2 pictures. So let's talk about straps for a minute. Out of service conditions for straps. So let's identify this one in the lower left-hand corner here. Let's say, for example, this red stripe is a 1/2 inch cut. On a 4-inch strap, you're allowed 3/4 of an inch of defect before the strap is placed out of service. So being that this particular strap is 4 inches, the cut is a 1/2 inch or less, that strap is still in service. Although the cuts, if there were numerous cuts, for example, a 1/2 inch cut and then a 1/4 inch cut, you're at 3/4, but on the same edge, they're not additive. So that particular strap would be a fine strap to use. I would still replace it if I had a chance, but you're not going to be placed out of service for that particular strap. If you move up into the upper right-hand corner here, now I've added 2 cuts of a 1/2 inch. Now those with opposite sides of the 4-inch strap need to be added together. Now you've come up with an inch defect. In other words, you have an inch worth of cut on a 4-inch strap. That would be placed out of service in that particular picture. And then if you move to the one down below, cuts and holes at different locations across the width are additive. So let's say, for example, these horizontal lines, which would indicate a cut, are a 1/2 inch, or I'm sorry, a 1/4 inch to make this example work. We have a 1/2 inch of cut, but we've also had a hole within our strap. That hole is a 1/2 inch. So again, add those numbers all together, you come up with 1 inch. That strap is out of service. Now, something to keep in mind too, and some drivers do this, they think they're doing the right thing. They put the proper number of straps on, and just because they're a good driver, they decide to grab an old strap from their box and throw it over the load to be extra secure. The problem is that particular strap they've chosen is out of service for any number of reasons. The driver gets pulled in, gets inspected. The officer writes the violation on the inspection report as being out of service with an out of service strap. Approaches the driver, shows the driver the issue. The driver says, but officer, I'm easily over secured on this weight and on the placement of my straps. That wasn't the problem. The problem was he used a strap that was out of service as an added strap. So the driver removes the strap from the load and instantly is placed back in service. But for that point in time that strap was placed on the load, he was out of service, and that will remain on the inspection. The inspection report's already been written, that the officer's not going to change it. So the gist of that conversation would be, if the driver has out of service chains or straps on his vehicle, on his flatbed that he's storing, using for another time or another place, just remove those straps and chains. Don't get them confused. Don't think that you're trying to do a good job and then you end up getting placed out of service anyway. That's a terrible place to be in when you think you're doing above and beyond and you actually get penalized for being above and beyond. So make it a point to let your drivers know that they need to go in and only have in-service products, in-service equipment on the vehicle itself. So let's talk about working load limit identification for a second. On nylon straps, the working load limit, or WLL, is normally shown on a tag near the end of the attachment. It could also be printed on the webbing itself. For example, this one right down here, you could see the WLL is 5,400 pounds. It's 2,540 kilograms. Depending on the manufacturer, this is probably a Kenadine strap. Manufacturers use different manufacturing processes. The webbing down in here, the stitching could go further to increase its strength. It could be a different material, a thicker material. Usually, we can go under the assumption that a 4-inch strap is going to have a 4,000 pound working load limit. 3-inch is going to be 3,000. 2-inch, 2,000, and we get to 1 3/4, probably going to be around 1,750 pounds of working load limit. If the strap is marked 5,400 from the manufacturer, then that is the effective working load limit. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you travel around and you grab different straps here and there. And then all those other violations from the previous slide would apply to this particular strap with that 1/2-inch cuts and so forth and so on. Next, we're moving over to the strap ratchet itself. So you could see the little white tag here. It looks like it's maybe sewn into the material. Sometimes they're attached to the ratchet themselves. Again, make sure that you know the working load limit of the ratchet itself. Whatever that working load limit is, if it's below the rating of the strap, it's going to fall back to the rating of the ratchet, not the strap. So for example, if somehow you got this ratchet on this strap, it may be underrated from the 5,400. That ratchet could be rated at, who knows, 4,000 pounds. That's the effective working load limit you would have, even though you're using a 5,400 pound strap. So be careful, guys out there that, they see equipment, they try to mix and match. The strap might be bad. Again, they're doing a great job. They remove the strap from the ratchet, but they put the ratchet on another strap that is not sized properly. And therein lies the problem when they get inspected. So here's a couple examples. We have some steel sheets loaded on a flatbed trailer. This gentleman could have just run those cross chains across the top of them and called it a day. He went ahead and added some downward pressure by adding blocks underneath of the ratchet binders to put some downward pressure on the product itself. So again, a nice way of adding additional securement, pushing down on that product, trying to minimize any forward movement that could be occurring. Now, over here, what we're going to have is this gentleman went ahead and used the cross chain as an anchor point and ran the chain around and through and then underneath the front edge of the steel plates. And you can't see it, but he secured the edges of the chain to the rub rail areas. So again, that minimizes any forward movement, hopefully eliminates it, but does minimize any forward movement were he to aggressively brake or have an emergency situation that would call for a rapid deceleration, as we say. We have spoken to a number of DOT officers about this securement approach. They didn't seem to be concerned about using that cross chain as an anchor point. So we're pretty confident that that is a good way to secure. If anybody else out there has any comments on this particular type of securement, I'd like to hear from them. But so far in what we've been working with, we have not had any negative feedback from law enforcement or inspectors on this type of securement. So now moving on, here's another type. Again, we have sheets. This gentleman decided to do a similar situation, but he ran it from one end of the rub rail over top of the corner, down along the front. And then if you look over here on the right-hand side, you could see where that chain follows through underneath, and then he secured it over into the rub rail over here. So, you know, another nice way of securing, again, for every flatbedder out there, and especially the veterans, man, you'll get every which way but loose to secure things. And I'd like to think that most of them are correct, but a lot of guys can be uneducated in terms of how to secure and secure properly. They've been taught by their brother, their father, an uncle, a grandfather. You know, old habits die hard sometimes. So you may want to let guys take a second look at these securement devices. And also something else that I didn't bring into play on this PowerPoint is I know, for example, Rittenhour does have a plate that was mounted on their frame rail of their flatbed. I'm not sure if it was a Big Bubba or one of the other ones. It's actually an ID plate, and it identified the ratings of their particular rub rail areas. For example, and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head. If someone would like me to send them to them, let me know, reach out to me. I could send you a picture of that. They might use, for example, you use one side of the stake body pocket could be rated at 4,000 pounds. So you run a hook underneath, hook to the bottom of the one side of the stake body. Now you're rated at 4,000 pounds on that securement head. Let's say you want to use two spools. You can barely see the spools over here in this particular picture. Let's say you go around the two spools, you may be rated at 6,000 pounds. One spool could be 5,400 pounds. I can't remember the exact numbers. Like I said earlier, if you'd like me to send you a picture of that, or if you'd like to reach out to Rittenhour or any other manufacturer, feel free and they'd be able to help you out. So I thought that was interesting that they actually did have a rating on some of those items. So here we have a picture of some chains. And let's look at some violations in these chains. Not the greatest picture up here, but the identification on this one was that it was a stretched link. That would be an out of service violation on that particular type of chain. The next one down in the middle, the silverish ones right here, you can obviously see the wear on these links in these particular areas here. So again, be placed out of service. These chains would not be something that you'd want to use. And then obviously the one down below, you can easily see that link has been broken, probably because it's been forced along the edge of this, looks like an I-beam or some kind of steel structure. So, you know, you push that link along there, the link popped, that chain is effectively doing nothing. Now we go back over here to, let's see, look at our hooks. You can see there, it's a 3/8 inch hook. It's rated at a G7 transport, so grade 70 transport. And wouldn't you know it, this particular hook has a rating of 6,600 pounds. That would be great. If you're using a 3/8 inch chain, that's also rated at 6,600 pounds. So you're in the money. You're using the proper hook, the proper chain, everything is good. Where we could have a problem is this gentleman decides to take this chain, and because it's not functioning, it's actually a 5/16. He takes the hook, this hook, off of that chain, puts it on a 3/8 inch chain, and now his working load limit is effectively 4,700 pounds. So if that had been the case in that earlier picture of the coil, he would have been rated, had he used 4 chains and he was rated, 4 times 4,700 pounds, he's actually going to be under secured on that particular load because he used a 5/16 hook on a 3/8 inch chain. Again, just something to bring up to drivers. I'd like to think that they're aware of that, but in the heat of the moment, guys get loaded, they're in a rush, they grab chains, something's broken, they think they're going to fix it. They might grab the wrong item, put the wrong item on, and the officer looks at it and determines it's out of service. So real quick, the top 5 driver out of service violations for 2022, I'm not going to really work on them too much because we're focusing on some other items. But if you look over here, the top 5 vehicle out of service violations for 2022, top one, about 25% of out of service vehicle violations related to brake systems, about 20% related to tires, defective service brakes were at about 13%, lights about 12.5%, cargo securement is at about 10%. And that's where we're focusing this year, the cargo securement on the CVSA inspection program. So here's another picture. This fine young man from Houston is still hard at work looking at that trailer. He's looking hard at it. So it's that out of service criteria, it's a pass-fail criteria for inspections. And the purpose is to identify critical violations. And those violations that render the driver, the vehicle, and or the cargo out of service until the conditions or the defects can be corrected or fixed. So I'm sure everyone here, or if you're not, there's something called the CVSA decal. And we can see the picture down here in the lower right-hand corner. You got a green, yellow, looks like orange, and a white sticker. So during this inspection process, if you have a level 1, level 5, or level 6 inspection, and they're passed with no critical inspection items listed, you should receive one of these decals. And the way you can designate when you received it is by the color. So for example, January, February, March are going to be indicated by green. April, May, and June are going to be yellow. July, August, and September are going to be gold. And the white one is going to cover the 4th quarter, which is October, November, December. And you're going to say, well, how do I know which month I got that in? Well, that's pretty much covered too. We should know that the government loves to cover that part of it. So if you see a green sticker with both green or both upper corners missing, okay, that would be done in the 1st month. So for example, this green sticker has both upper corners removed. That's going to indicate that that inspection occurred in January. The yellow, if the upper right corner is removed, that means it would have been done in the month of May. The 3rd month, if no corners are removed, that would mean that it was done in September, for example. So that's kind of how those stickers work, just to give you a little insight onto that. Again, you're only going to get it during a level 1, level 5, or level 6 inspection. So don't expect it if it's just a driver only or a vehicle only. And then I like to add the seatbelt in here just because that is a really important factor of just usage in general. So during Operation Safe Driver Week of 22, there were, find it kind of hard to believe, but it's a good number. There were 735 failure to wear seatbelt violations issued. The seatbelt usage rate for commercial motor vehicle drivers is about 86.1%. And it's usually about the second most cited driver violation that you find. Mentioned earlier in the beginning, this covers North America. In other words, Mexico, the United States, and Canada. There's about 4 million inspections are conducted in North America each year. And since 1988, more than 1.8 roadside inspections have been conducted during International Roadcheck. So let's look at a couple of the different programs that CVSA runs throughout the course of the year. And these are enforcement and awareness programs. The International Roadcheck, we're talking about that one right now. That's going to be from May 16th through the 18th of this particular year. So we're not sure what the dates are going to be next year, but they will probably announce it soon. Operation Air Brake. That air brake operation initiative is going to be August 20th through the 26th of this year. And that's going to focus on brake issues and things of that nature. So you might want to start getting ahead of that, get with your maintenance teams, your operation teams, start taking a closer look at some of your brake systems, make sure that they're all in working order. We actually have Operation Safe Driver. That's going to be in July 9th through the 15th of 2023. Probably going to be focusing on more driver-centric type things, logbook violations, probably looking for unsafe driving as they travel down the road, more so than vehicle issues. And then we have human trafficking prevention, which January is usually designated by the presidential decree to be Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And that's usually January, although it should really be a daily awareness type of thing. There are different programs and different paperwork and brochures that you can gather from CVSA and different organizations on human trafficking. Maybe bring the awareness to your drivers, bring that to the forefront so that they're aware of what could be considered human trafficking when they go to truck stops or they're traveling throughout their day. Rest areas, it's a huge problem today. And the more people that are aware of it, the better the chances are that we can solve that particular issue. So I'd like to close with, basically on the road, safety begins with you. And what I mean by you is you starts at the top of the organization itself, operations personnel, maintenance personnel, and then ultimately the driver, because the driver is the one that is going to have the direct interaction with the inspector as he gets inspected. And I also want to cover real quick too, before I close out completely, the officer did make a point of mentioning that the pre and post-trip inspections are really two of the most important things to get ahead of the curve on the inspections and the violations. Post-trip possibly being even more important than the pre-trip because it gives you a chance to repair things before you show up to work the next day, or your fellow driver shows up to take a vehicle that you may have used yesterday and you left it in the yard with a flat tire, a light out, the ABS light isn't working, brakes are malfunctioning, fluid leaks. If that's identified in the post-trip, they have possibly another full shift to get those items repaired before they go out the following morning. So with that, I would just like to ask everybody to, take a closer look at your vehicles. We still have about 3 weeks to get those ABS items taken care of. Take a close look at the markings on the ABS. If they don't have them, get them on there somehow. Take a look at that FMVSS 121. That'll give you a little bit more definitive information than I may have given you today. But all in all, everybody have a safe inspection period. And I hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, John. We did have a couple questions pop up. So if you have the time, would you mind answering? The first question is, do you have a PDF file or PowerPoint slides? Yes, I will in the email that comes out tomorrow with the recap, attach John's PowerPoint to that in PDF form. So you guys will have that. That was from an anonymous attendee. The second question is from Pat, and Pat asked, are annotations needed in trip for sealed vans / reefer trailers?
Ah, you know, I knew I was forgetting something. That was actually addressed in the webinar from Commercial Carrier Journal. And it's funny, if I didn't know any better, I think the gentleman that asked that question may have been on that webinar, because the question came very similar. You know, the trooper's response was, if the trailer is equipped with E-Track and the ability to secure product, then yes, they would expect to see something, a load bar, load straps, something. As we're all probably familiar, because you put a load bar there or a load strap does not mean that the load is secured the way it would be on a flatbed trailer. But an effort has been made, and that could go a long way in the inspector's eyes. If he opens the trailer doors and the E-Track is there with no securement devices, right there is a warning sign that that could be an issue. If it does not have E-Track, either horizontally or vertical in the ribs, then they do make the air cushions that can be placed by shippers in there to secure against the sides of the trailer. Again, it's a tough call. Some of the guys that were on that call, their companies, they work with the shippers and loaders and ask them to try to secure it in a manner that is sufficient. They ask their drivers, if possible, to watch the loading and advise to maybe stagger loads, stagger boxes. Totes, for example, liquid totes, you may want to stagger those. Don't run them along, obviously, one side. If you run them in a single line along the center of the trailer, that could cause an issue when you take a turn. If you stagger them and butt them up against each other, it may minimize the movement. So yeah, that's a tough one. Purely sealed containers that you aren't allowed to open that have a seal on them, for example, containers possibly coming from overseas, that's a tough one. If the officer cuts the seal, then it's his responsibility to reseal it and annotate that it's been resealed by him, which he will do. But that's a difficult one for the driver himself, because he's not able to cut that seal to look at his load and see what the load looks like. Now, he is responsible to secure that trailer onto the carriage at the port properly. But in terms of getting inside and looking at the securement devices, yeah, that's a tough one. And ironically, there was no great answer during that webinar. It was kind of the answer I just gave you. But I think the gist of it was that if the officer sees that there's an effort being made to do the proper thing, that it goes a long way. So I hope that answered the question.
Very good. Next question is from Nicholas Nazarino. I hope I'm saying that. We deliver loads for USPS. They are locked by post office. I believe they will not have authorization to open our trailers. Do you agree?
Yeah. Well, the driver obviously can't. The officer, it's a good question. I can truthfully tell you, I don't know the specific answer, although, well, I don't know. That's a good one. I'll have to look that up. I would think as a federal officer conducting an inspection, that he would have the right to do it, obviously, and then reseal it. I don't know.
That might be a good one to follow up via email.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. If it was Nicholas, was it?
Yeah.
If you'd like to follow up with an
Nazarino.
email, because I'd actually like to look into that further, maybe reach out to some of my contacts in the inspection field and get a definitive answer for you. But it sounds like you do that type of work. I'd be anxious to see, maybe if you responded to me, if you've actually had that happen and how it was handled.
All right, next question. What about 2-inch straps? What is the out of service spec for them?
The 2-inch strap, I think, let's go back to my notes real quick here. 2-inch, let's see. You know what? I don't have the 2-inch strap violation in my notes. I'm not really sure. It was, let's see, on the 2-inch was anything greater than 3/8 of an inch on the 2/8, on the 2-inch. On a 3-inch strap, it would be 5/8 of an inch. And again, like we had discussed earlier, on the 4-inch, it's 3/4 of an inch.
Very good. All right. Last question. What are your recommendations for chains / binders / odds and ends securement and storage for the week of May 16th? Asking about the chains and binders themselves.
Yep. You know, it's funny when I used to go out and see our flatbed accounts, one of my pet peeves, we ran a lot of Conestogas, and Conestogas are great for ease of coverage. Ironically, it allows the driver to become lax in how he stores his securement devices. So many times I would get up on the deck of the trailer in a Conestoga and find that the binders and chains, lumber, dunnage was loosely placed in an open area that was technically not secured. I would always get our drivers to secure them somehow, hopefully on the hanging rails on the bulkhead in the front with a locking cover. But just, you know, even the dunnage and the wood, get the wood organized, make a bulkhead if you'd like, secure that with a chain. I want to see every loose item on that deck secured in some manner, whether it be placed in a bucket or a bin and the bin secured. But if I was an officer, that would be I could tell you right now, that would be one of my pet peeves, is getting up on a Conestoga or an open flatbed. But it occurs more with a Conestoga because I think the drivers feel that the inspectors can't see it, so they're not going to make a big deal about it. But think about it, were that tractor to roll or have a major accident, the soft-sided Conestogas really have no containment protection at all. So those pieces of wood or the binders themselves will cut right through that vinyl of a Conestoga and become projectiles flying all over the highway. So again, how to do it? I know on some of the bulkheads there are items or are ways to secure it, and they have a lid that comes down and you can lock the lid to secure the binders and the chains. But if you don't have that, come up, secure the items like you would a normal load securement in some way. The wood should be chained down. A single chain should be sufficient for that type of wood for dunnage. The chains and binders, maybe get some kind of container or a box. I know that the side boxes are on a lot of the flatbeds. That's where a lot of the product should be. So really, look at it as though you were a motorist on the roadway. How comfortable would you feel if you saw loose chain and loose binders and loose wood laying on a flatbed? In fact, just a real quick story. We got inspected a number of years ago in Canada. We were placed out of service for a rock, a stone, being on the platform of the trailer leg, the pad that contacts the ground. We were written up for a rock being on that piece, that foot. And the officer's reasoning was that if that rock came loose while you were traveling down the road, it became a projectile, which for a car and a truck, you know, maybe you're talking a cracked windshield, scratched fiberglass, but think about it for those of us who ride motorcycles. If you've ever been hit in the face with a bug on a motorcycle at 70 miles an hour, it's painful. So could you imagine being hit by a rock, a small rock, maybe an inch in diameter, 3/4 of an inch diameter? For all intents and purposes, it could be a bullet. And as silly as it may sound, we did get written for that. I do have a copy of that DOT report in case there's any disbelief out there, because I couldn't believe it myself. But, and ironically, that rock was removed and we were back in service. But for that point in time that the officer saw the rock on the pad, we were out of service.
Very good. And I shot John you the email of the gentleman asking about the post office question, so
Great.
you can follow up with him.
Great, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? No other questions. All right. Well, we are almost right at the hour, so that's perfect timing. I just want to thank everybody that joined us today. I want to thank John. In closing, I'd just like to say that Buying, maintaining vehicles is incredibly expensive and burdensome. Hiring and maintaining your own drivers is all consuming. I know this very well. And AIM's dedicated contract carriage division gives you relief from those issues. So you can focus on bottom line growth. You can focus on growing your enterprise, and all of your resources aren't tied up in hiring, maintaining, and making sure your drivers are safe. AIM has all the experts, just like John, on hand to make sure that all of your cargo is getting moved safely, timely, and securely. So consider us if you haven't. Reach out to me and we can have a conversation about what dedicated contract carriage looks like at AIM, or family owned and operated, and our attention to detail and our support of our customers is second to none. So thank you so much, John, for being here. An email will come out to everybody with resources from the webinar, and I hope you join future webinars and see us soon to talk about other safety related topics and other topics that pertain to people operating commercial fleets. So thanks, John. Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.